Big week for us in terms of growth and getting better as a basketball program. We took a day off after getting back, and then we were back on the practice court yesterday. Our guys had really good energy. It's important for each of our guys individually and then our group collectively to understand that the games in Vegas were a good indicator of areas where we need to get better, areas where we can be really good. But for us, it continues to be about building habits and then bringing those habits to bear when it matters most, which is during the game. Obviously, consistency is something that all teams at this time of year are working towards. We've got a long way to go in that regard, but I think for our guys, the point I've been making to them is, can you overcome whatever circumstances you get hit with over the course of the game? And can you continue to make the right decisions and help your teammates be in the right place to make winning plays? That's something that I think our guys have made progress in, and I'm excited about the progress that we can continue to make.
Questions, please. Raise your hand. Dennis in front.
What in particular in that Michigan State game, it almost seems like it's the perfect game for you to have early in the season where, again, you're running with the big boys and doing so well, but then you have a lot of coachable film after. What in particular are you going to grow from that game?
Well, that game was a real learning experience for all of our guys, our whole team, in that Michigan State did all the things they needed to do down the stretch to win that game. You know, most importantly, making shots. I mean, they made some huge shots, particularly from outside, but around the basket as well. I told our guys, you know, and this applies to the Carolina game as well, when a team is shooting really, really well and making tough shots, you have to make them miss. They're not going to start missing on their own. You have to make them miss. So I think, you know, for us defensively, and that's something that we always want to be an anchor for us, the defensive end, there's some real humble pie that should come out of those games, because you had some really talented, big-time players making some plays that we need to do a better job taking away. So that would be one thing, the first thing that comes out of that game. And I think for us, having a level of poise and sometimes even patience to make the right play on the offensive end and continue to stick to the things that have brought us success in the past. We got away from that, especially in the second half of the Michigan State game. There was, you know, certainly several possessions where we didn't have the same commitment to the plan of what we need to do, and that affected us. You know, certainly some fatigue, I think, affected our guys. But I told our guys, hey, you know, if you want to be a special team, you have to be able to overcome those sorts of things.
Kirk in front. Good shooting against North Carolina. Do you feel like that provided validation for this team and now that they know they can?
I thought of you, Kirk, and every time a shot went in, I just wondered what your response was. No, you know, that's an area, we've talked about this, it's not necessarily the most consistent area of the game for most teams, three-point shooting, but it certainly for us has not been an area of consistency. And even, you know, if you look at this season, if you break down our outside shooting even by halves, you know, we've had halves where we've really struggled making outside shots, and then we've had a few where we've shot the ball really well. And if you put two halves together where you shoot the ball really well, then, you know, that's a recipe for scoring a lot of points. I still tend to focus as a coach on creating high-quality shots, and then obviously the other half of that equation is our guys being ready to shoot, being confident in their shooting, having a mentality of shooting to make the shot as opposed to not wanting to miss the shot. I know that sounds like just, you know, kind of mincing words or splitting hairs, but it really is a difference. You know, when the ball comes to you, I hope I make it, I want to make it, instead of like just, hey, man, I'm just letting it fly, and I'm going to shoot it the right way. I'm going to shoot it the way I've worked on for a long time. But I think when our guys do that, we have certainly a better chance to make shots. And some of our young guys are still settling into the fact that at the college level, you have to get it off quicker, the contest is harder, you have to make the decision faster. So 6 games into the year, we've made some progress in that area, but there's still a lot of growth to be made.
Brian, kind of follow up on that. Sorry, I mean, I thought both games were the epitome of what we've been talking about. You know, y'all's defense and rebounding is going to keep y'all in it every night. It's just, do y'all make enough shots, or do you have a stretch where you don't? And I thought that the guys did a really good job of creating something that wasn't there, like Matt's mid-range, to get the elbow and things like that. Do they pick up on that? It's just, you know, just go get something, go to the rim if nothing else.
Well, especially when you're playing a team like North Carolina, because their defense is really aggressive, and with some of the stuff they do, they take you out of what you're trying to run. But the floor is extended, so now there are opportunities to drive and attack. And to your point, and this goes back to Javon Felix when we were fortunate to beat North Carolina a few years ago. If you remember, in games like that, if you want to win, you have to stick to the plan and execute and all that, but then you also need some individual guys to step up and make some big individual plays. And guys did that. Snoop was phenomenal. Obviously, that's the best that he's played since he's been here, but it's not surprising to see him play like that because he has gotten better and better and better. He's gained a level of confidence. And now the question is going to be, you know, how close can he come to that level on a more consistent basis? Not necessarily scoring 32, 33 points and going 12 for 15, but attacking the way that he did and playing with that type of mentality.
Shaka, kind of piggybacking off what you just said about Snoop, it just seemed like he was really in control of that game. He wasn't really kind of pressing anything or forcing anything, kind of letting, you know, either the drive and kick come to him.
Yep.
Is that just a sign of how much he's matured, you know, as just a playmaker for the team?
Yes, it is. He's really grown in terms of understanding when he drives, not making his mind up in advance what's going to happen next, taking what the defense gives him. I believe he had 5 assists in the first half of that game against North Carolina. And it's very easy as a player when you do make a few shots to feel like, okay, I got my offense going, so I'm gonna shoot every time. At the same time, it's easy as a guard to get in the mode of I'm going to drive and create for other guys every time. And so it takes a special mindset to do both. But that's what the best players at this level can do. And hopefully Snoop is moving towards that.
Shock, after 2 games against, you know, high-profile opponents, trip to Vegas, now you come home, Radford. Some people might not know much other than the fact that they went to Notre Dame and won a road game. Is that where your guys really have to be locked in this week? Because obviously last week they were excited about what was in front of them.
Well, absolutely. We better be locked in for Radford because they got a really good team. Their coach is one of my best friends. We work together at VCU. And they're an NCAA tournament team who, as you mentioned, went on the road and beat Notre Dame. But to be honest with you, that's secondary to the fact that this week and this game and every game is all about our own approach towards growth and improvement and implementing, carrying out the things that we say we're going to do. You know, it's really easy to get caught up in the individual opponent and the scouting report, and that stuff's important. But the bigger question is, again, depending on you know, where you are coming into that game, can you find a way to be the best you can be in terms of carrying over what you said you were going to do and what you worked on every day? And obviously the number one key for us in that way is just consistency. But Radford will definitely present some challenges for us. They've got some guys on their team that can play for us. So it's going to be one of those games where as we get closer to the game, our guys will certainly be inundated with information about what they can do and video, but still we got to beat Texas.
Those types of trips and games can often show you where you could be really, really good and where there's some areas that you've got to get much, much better at. Where do you think you guys could be great at, and what's maybe 1 or 2 areas that you say you've got to make a lot of improvements here?
We can be really good playing with pace, Dustin. I think we have good personnel for playing fast, getting out, running the floor. sharing the basketball, spacing the floor. You probably noticed we made some adjustments offensively where we've opened up the lane more, just because we feel like we have some guys in Jackson and Jericho that when they do screen and sprint to the basket, it puts a lot of pressure on the rim. And it also, when you open up the floor, it gives guys like Snoop and Matt a chance to drive more. So we can be really good at that. We've got a ways to go still in terms of utilizing our pick-and-roll game on a consistent basis, making the right reads. Our guys are doing a really good job taking care of the basketball, but there are still some reads that we're missing that we need to make better. Defense, we could be really good. You know, I thought we got fatigued to some extent in the Michigan State game, and that's not an excuse. We have to find a way to still be tough-minded and aggressive on defense, but I thought we lacked that in the second half of that game. So we've got to get back on the practice court and work really hard on what goes into being a great defensive team. You know, to be honest, the areas where we need to improve are the same, but even more specifically, grabbing the ball when you make a team miss. Michigan State had a bunch of offensive rebounds, I believe over 20. And it's one of those things where we can block them out or keep them from, you know, going over the rim to get it, but even if the ball hits the floor, you still got to grab the ball. And that's an area where we really need to get better. On the offensive end, you know, we've got several guys that are still hesitant from the standpoint of, well, should I shoot? Should I pass? Should I even look at the basket? Most of those guys are freshmen and sophomores, so they're young. They just need to keep getting better.
What's the biggest challenge right now for Jericho, and where's his confidence level 6 games in?
You may want to ask him. Jericho's making a lot of progress. He's getting better. I think you'll see him hit his stride at some point. The question is when, and you know, we want that to be sooner rather than later. He's had some foul trouble that's affected him in some of our games. It's always tough for a young player to navigate that in a game mentally. But I think his confidence has grown from where he was last year at this time, but he's still a ways away from fully being able to take all the things he can do and process those things in his mind and go make those things happen on a consistent basis. That's not surprising for a young guy. I think in college basketball, we all sometimes have these expectations that guys are going to figure it out quicker than maybe they realistically should. You know, we'd all love for Jericho to go get 20 points and 10 rebounds every game. That'd be terrific. We know that he's capable of that in some games. I don't know if he's ready to do that. He's obviously not ready to do that every game. We talked about that, you know, in one of these sessions going into the season. But my thing for Jericho is just helping him get better at doing A, B, C, D, E like that. He's really good at each of those things, but sometimes in the game, you don't have time to do A and then stop and think and then do B and then stop and think. You know, the best players are guys that can just do those things fast. And he still has a ways to go to figure that out. But the good thing is he has time. You know, nobody is telling him that he has to go from here to here overnight. At least no one within our program is telling him that.
Brian, kind of along those lines, I mean, Bob kind of stole my thunder there. Sorry, Brian. Yes, with Jericho. Bottom line, when do you make the move and put Jackson in the starting lineup over him?
You tell me, Brian.
It's clear by how you play the guys rotation-wise that you like Jackson, you like what he's doing. It's obvious. But I would imagine that taking Jericho out of the starting lineup could be detrimental, maybe to him mentally.
So why'd you ask the question then?
So when are you going to put Jackson Hayes in the starting lineup? Because he seems to be playing better.
Well, first of all, you don't necessarily start the 5 guys that are playing the best. if that was the case, then we would make changes to our starting lineup on a regular basis. There's a lot of other things that you factor in. Secondly, I don't like Jackson. I love Jackson. And I love Jericho. Both those guys have the potential to be phenomenal players, and they both have different strengths. And by the way, we're a ways away from being great at this, but they can be really good together down the road. We got to keep working on it. They played, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes together against Michigan State. We've got to keep getting them in there together where they can get comfortable with that. And schematically, as a coaching staff, we have to get more comfortable with that. But to answer your question, there are no plans to change anything. But at the same time, that can happen with any position, any time. It can happen at halftime of a game where, a guy's playing better and it just makes more sense to bring in one of the guys that didn't start the game and have him start the half.
Staying with Jackson, has there been an area in which he's excelled already that has surprised you, or other areas like that?
Not really. I mean, he is what we thought he was, to use the Dennis Green saying, but he is just getting better faster than even we thought. And we knew, here's a guy who went from 6 minutes a game his junior year to first team All-State his senior year. So when you have that type of trajectory before you get to college, it's not surprising that you're going to really continue to get better, especially when you get in a full-time, strength and conditioning program. You're on the court more often for individual skill development. You're competing against college Big 12 level guys in practice every day. So the thing that's been great about Jackson is he is always eager to grow and learn and to be coached. And like everyone else, he has days where he's not necessarily at his best, but he always, this is the best thing about him, he always comes back from those days and is phenomenal the next day. And I think that's a terrific sign for him that he has, as a freshman, the presence of mind to understand, I need to be better. I need to grow. And as long as that continues, I think he's going to keep getting better and better over the course of the season.
Kirk and Buck, is part of that wanting to just spark and energy off the bench?
Yeah. Can you explain that to Brian? I mean, there are certain things that when guys come off the bench, if they can give you, it really, really helps your team. And there's certain lineups. So, he comes in the game and he gives us a real energy boost. Defensively, he's a real presence around the rim. He's our best roll guy, sprinting to the rim. So, definitely when he comes in the game, the level goes up in those areas.
So, did you feel like your team play with the same sense of urgency they did with North Carolina, or did any of them relax like we're pretty good?
I actually thought, Kirk, our sense of urgency starting the Michigan State game was phenomenal. We had something like 11 deflections in the first 5, 6 minutes of the game against Michigan State. That's a huge stat that we keep, and we have a game goal that we try to get to. But if you're getting more than one a minute, that's really, really good. Our guys were flying around. It helps when you make shots. The one thing that I put on the board after that game is I wrote the word juice, which is kind of our saying, our word for energy and spirit and what you bring to your team. And then I wrote the word shooting or scoring. And I said, which one leads to which? And I did think as the game went on, later in the game, Kirk, our guys allowed the fact that the ball wasn't going in as much to affect our juice level, to affect our, I don't think our urgency, but our aggressiveness. But in terms of wanting to win and, wanting to go after another big-time win, I didn't think that was any less. I did think you know, we allowed fatigue to affect us some in the second half, and they were a tougher, more aggressive team in the last 20 minutes. So that's something that we got to get better at.
Joe on the front right.
For Jase, his field goal percentage is up about 10 points this year, but his 2-point percentage is about the same as it was last year. Is that something that he needs to improve on to really have his game open up, or is that something that you can maybe let slide a little bit and want him to work on his 3-point game to open up the offense?
Well, it's interesting with shooters. Guys that are great shooters, they only evaluate themselves based on one thing, and that's whether they're making outside shots. And so it's always a battle as a coach to get them to understand there are other areas of the game where you can help your team. He reminds me so much of a kid that I coached several years ago named Troy Daniels, who plays for the Phoenix Suns now. He's the best shooter I ever coached. And Jase is really at the same age, very, very similar to Troy. Jase needs to find ways to impact our team beyond his outside shooting. That's whether the ball's going in or not going in. Now, we are appreciative that he's shooting the ball at a better clip now than he was this time last year. I'm not surprised. He's put a lot of time in. He'll continue to get better at that. But we need him to rebound the ball better. We need him to get his hands on the basketball on defense and stay in front of his man better. Certainly, you mentioned 2-point percentage. He doesn't shoot a lot of those, but when he does, he needs to put those away. He had a nice play in Vegas where the guy was running at him. He shot faked and put the ball down the floor and shot a pull-up. That's a sign of growth for him to be able to be a little more multidimensional than someone that's just shooting from outside every time.
Dustin, front left. In terms of forcing turnovers, I mean, you guys are, I think, 15th nationally in turnover percentage on defense, which is by far your best rate since you've been in Texas. Why do you think that is? What is it about this group that's better able to force turnovers? Is it, you know, is it a style thing? Is it
No,
culture?
it's not a style thing. It's more culture, and it's a matter of playing with juice. It's a matter of playing with energy. And, you know, certainly there's some possessions where we pressed, where we were able to force a turnover. But it's not, that's secondary to just going after it, you know, playing with a sense of, I want to get my hands on the basketball. I want to keep the other team from doing what they want to do. And to be honest with you, we still got a long way to go in that area. You know, it's interesting. Courtney, coming into the season, is a guy I would have said is the best on our team at that. But he's still feeling his way. You know, he's a freshman. He's still working through mentally the adjustment. I think in Vegas he almost wanted it too bad, and that affected him a little bit. But once we get him and then a couple other guys a little bit more aggressive and assertive on the defensive end, I think we can be better.
Time for two last ones. Bob in front.
I could be reading way too much into this, but just listening to last week's press conference, it felt like you had a sense you guys were going to play really well in Vegas, that you have a sense with this team that you know they were going to surprise some people last week. Do you have that sense that this team's going to be maybe better than what people thought, and how much has changed, you know, from some of these previous teams you've had in that sense?
I definitely think we can be a lot better than people maybe gave us credit for going into the season, but you know, it still remains to be seen how much we can take the things that we have and like push them and move them forward every day. I haven't done this exercise with this team, but I don't remember which team it was, but one of the teams we had here, we did this exercise where we had one of the coaches drag one of our players across the gym. And then we had a couple players pick up a coach and then carry him across the gym. So we had a race. And was the player that had to, or the coach that had to drag the player going to win, or the players that picked up the coach going to win the race? And of course the dragging takes longer. And so it's just a matter of that, you know. Are we going to, as a basketball program, really buy into following the plan and an extreme emphasis on growth and getting better, both individually and as a team? If we do, then yeah, I think this team could be really, really good. I mean, I'm not surprised that you know, we were able to win one of those games, and we we're in a position early in the game to win the second one. Now, I'm also not surprised that we weren't able to close it out, because we got to get better at a lot of the things that we've talked about today. But yeah, we have a chance if we can stay healthy, knock on wood, and you know, continue coming together as a team around one cause to have a really good season.
Given that you debuted this week at number 17, which I think is your highest ranking since you've been here, does that give your team any of the juice you're talking about? Do you guard against
No.
that? Is there swagger with that?
We don't take juice from external factors. That has to come from within. I mean, going into this tournament in Vegas, we used this a lot with our team. There's a graphic that had the tournament, one of the promotional graphics, and you had 3 ranked teams, then you had us. And you know, the ranking is based on what other people think of our program and our team at the current moment. It's kind of a real-time data point, and then it changes the next week. So for us, what's way more important is how we feel about our own growth and maturation, and where we feel like we can end up if we keep getting better. So our guys are going to have to do a good job handling the fact that, okay, yeah, some people think that you're better now than they thought you were several days ago, but that really doesn't change anything.